Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. And today we're going to be looking at one of the last Codebusters ciphers that is left for us to cover, and this is the Xenocrypt cipher. And so, just a little bit of background if you've never heard about what the Xenocrypt cipher is, it's essentially similar to an aristocrat cipher, except it is in all Spanish. So, something really helpful is if one of your teammates out of the three of you is taking Spanish as a elective or no Spanish, it's going to be really helpful for solving this. Otherwise, it's almost impossible to solve a Xenocrypt without actually knowing the basic vocab for Spanish. So this example I've picked up from the Tobes website, and we're just going to work through it. For the Xenocrypt cipher, you're given a different frequency table, which is the frequency table of Spanish letters. And so it's a little bit different from the English one, but this can be helpful while trying to solve it. And so we basically just go about it like you would an aristocrat, but you just have to keep in mind that the entire thing is in Spanish. So first thing that we're going to take a look at is we're going to see that D and F have the highest frequencies, which means they could be equal to E and A. And we kind of just like an aristocrat, you have to see that you just have to see where, like, trying out what each of these letters could be, and then substituting and taking a look at them. So one thing that I notice here is that F starts a lot of the two-letter words. And so something that you might know about Spanish already is that, the letter A usually doesn't start a lot of words. I mean, the only word I can really think of is all, A-L, but, that's not typically used that often. So I think it's a pretty good guess to say that F stands for E because, you can think of, like, there's N, right? L. So all of those start with E. So we're going to guess that F is E and D is A. So now if we actually go ahead and fill that in, we're going to get an A over here. We get an E here, an E here, E here. And an E here, an A there, an A there, A, E, A, E, an E, E, and A, E, and A, 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 E, and A. Alright, there we go. So now it's all filled in. Now, let's keep going. So now let's take a look at some of the letters that are, that we filled in. So we see that the ones that are ending with an A, there's two right over here. They have the same letter in it, which is K. And so the most obvious word that you can think of that ends with A is probably going to be law. So let's try with K is going to be an L. And so if we go here and we then go ahead and fill it in, we're going to get L here, which makes sense. We're going to get la, and then another L there, an L here, and L here, and that's about it. So now the next thing we want to look at is F and V. So it can either be N, it can be L, or it can be S. Now, you've never heard about, L law, right? That's just not a thing. So it's either N or S. Now, the next thing that we can try to look at is that there's there's a L it could be N or S over here, and then there's also one that's right after the semicolon. And so what that can mean to us is that it could be, something, 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 and then is that, or is the, right? Or it could be in the. And so in the doesn't really make that much sense. And so we can try guessing that as S, right? And just know that if this turns out to be wrong, we could 100% go back and try something else. So if we guess that as S, then we're going to get an S here, an S here, we're going to get here, here, and that is about it. So now the next thing that we can see is that it's L blank S. So the only word that really can fit in there is los. So for that, we're going to put an O, and R is going to be equal to O. So now if we go ahead and fill that in, we get O there, and we get an O over here. Okay. Next up, let's take a look at our frequency table really quick. So we have EA, we have O, we have S. We don't have N yet. We have R. We don't have I. We have L. And we don't have D. Okay, so those are a couple of the things. Now if we take a look over here, we have I, J, and Q are probably the highest frequency on this table over here. Let's just take a look. We could see that if N, I, and D can make anything go up over here. So, if we take a look over here, we're going to see that we have IR over here. So it's something and then it ends in an O. And it has to go like something S-law. So the only thing I can really think of would probably be no S-law. And so if we fill in I as N, then we are going to get an N here, another N here, and an N here, and an N over there. Okay, so we have one thing. Next, if we keep taking a look, we have no S-law, something. Okay, so there's not really much there. Now, we can see that there is a common repeating pattern over here. So you can take a look that these two words are the exact same, right? And, we have A and E blank A. So there's something that goes over there, and it has to be a high frequency letter. So we just took out N. If we put I over there, we're going to get A-N-E-I-A, which we don't typically see 3 vowels in a row in Spanish. So our next high frequency letter is R, which we don't have yet. So we're going to try putting R as J. And so if we if we fill in all the R's, we're going to get Anera, which kind of makes sense. It could be Monera or it could be something else. So that sort of makes sense over there. So then if we keep moving on, then we look at our first 3-letter word over there, and we have something AR. So once again, taking a look at our highest frequency letters, the next thing we have in list is either I or D. Well, it's probably not IAR, so we could try DAR, which would be DAR. So let's try M as D. So we get they, which makes sense, and we get they right there. So we have something dar L something, no esla, something, something, they, and then it keeps going on. So now if we take a look, we have I left, and we've done D. So next thing we have left is I, which we kind of want to focus on a little bit. So our highest frequency letter right now is Q. And so let's take a look. If I were to put I where Q is, would it make sense? So I see a Q right here. I see a Q right there, and then a one right here. So honestly, if I put an I there, I don't think it would make terrible sense. So let's try putting an I over there. So you get an I there, an I here, an I here, and an I here, and then we have Q is mapping out to be an I. Okay, so that's kind of making a little bit sense. So let's take a look at the rest of the words. So we have dar el something, noes something, something, they, something. And then we have this word right here. There's supposed to be an R there, which could help us out. Los, they, something, esla, something, something. So if you were to take Spanish before, the most obvious thing that could probably go here is de mas. So if we try A as M, and we try filling it in, we get manera. Okay, so we're kind of making some more progress here. So dar el. So now if you were to look at this sentence fracture and you've taken Spanish before, it might make really easy sense that it could be ejemplo. So dar el ejemplo no es something manera de en something something los de es la something manera. Okay, so that was a lot of somethings in there. So we have J maps to here, and then we have the C maps to a P. So let's try to fill in the rest of the P's, and we get principal over there. Okay. So that means we fill in principal. So that means we get U is equal to C, right? Okay, so dar ejemplo no es la principal manera de something. So let's take a look at that last word. If you've taken Spanish, this kind of makes sense to be sobre. And also the frequency is quite low. This word is kind of throwing me off because I haven't seen it very much. But this one, if this is a C, this is probably going to be única. So that means we get a U here, and that means this ends up being include. No, it can't be incluir, so it have to be influir, right? So now, if you finally take a look at it, what you get is dar ejemplo no es la principal manera de influir sobre los demás, es la única manera. And if you've never taken Spanish before, this translates roughly to, giving an example is not the main way to influence someone or influence others. It is the only way. So if you've taken Spanish before, essentially this should be really easy for you. It should just be simply like an aristocrat cipher. But if you haven't taken Spanish, it's going to be really tough for you guys, and I would recommend just to skip the cipher. So now, just for a little bit of practice, I'm going to put this Xenocrypt cipher up and the frequency table right next to it. And like usual, I just want you guys to pause the video and try this out on your own. Okay, so hopefully you pause the video. What you should have gotten is lo malo de llorar cuando uno pico cebolla no es simplemente el hecho de llorar, sino que a veces uno empieza y ya no puede parar. So this roughly translates to like the bad thing about crying when an onion is cut isn't just the fact that you're crying, it's the fact that you can't stop once you've started crying. Okay, so the main thing here was probably just to focus on the high frequency letters. So you can see that the highest frequency was Y, and it actually mapped out to A. The third most frequency was a Z and it mapped out to, Y mapped out to E, Z mapped out to A, and then the second most was H, and it mapped out to O, which is right there. So it more or less worked in a frequency type of manner, and you just need to keep that in track. Another thing is that you see we have a Z, which is a single letter, and an O, which is a single letter. And so the only two single letters that could be there is A or Y that mostly have seen. And so if you would have taken a look at the frequency, you would have seen, well, O isn't that common, but Z is, so Z is probably an A, and O is probably a Y then. Okay, so hopefully that was easy for you guys to figure it out. And, let me know in the comments below if you guys have any questions or if there's anything you guys want me to review again. But if you like this video and if this helped you out, please like, subscribe, and comment to my channel, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you.